You are listening to When Life Gives You Lemons, the podcast that speaks to high-performing individuals who have been through adversity but come back stronger. I'm your host, Emma Levy, a physiotherapist who has helped elite athletes on their way to Olympic success. This podcast was born following my own trauma when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of just 36. Sat in the chemo chair, I set myself the goal of starting a podcast to explore resilience and the importance of mindset. 1 year ago, at the end of my second season of the podcast, I recorded my story. Today isn't going to be a repetition of that, and I won't go into so much detail. I do, however, have some new listeners, some new followers, so I might summarise some aspects of my background and my story. If you're interested in hearing more detail, I would signpost you to the episode in July of 2023. What I really wanted to cover today is what I feel I've learned since the podcast's inception 1 year ago. I have had the honour and the privilege to speak to some incredible individuals, listening to them tell their stories and how they have bounced back from the sheer depths of despair has been inspiring and motivational. Something that inspires me every time is hearing how people wouldn't change the challenges that they've been through if they went back in time because of how they feel it's allowed them to grow. Everyone has used different techniques throughout their healing journeys, but there is also some key themes which come up time and time again. And these are the things I would like to share today, because I feel that by instilling them into our daily life and our daily practices, we can also become enriched versions of ourselves. I don't want everyone to have to go through trauma to realize that they can also become stronger. By the way, when I talk about these things, do not get the impression that I am perfect. I try my best, but busy life exists. I have 3 young kids, a job, a podcast, and life stresses. And it's hard. I don't think perfection exists. I think social media makes us think that some people are living the perfect life with perfect children and they're happy all the time. And the rational side of our brain knows that this isn't true. However, our other brain, our chimp brain, can tell us otherwise. Why do we compare ourselves anyway? Like Brené Brown teaches, I try to strive for excellence rather than perfection. A quick introduction for those who don't know my story and how this podcast came about. I grew up a very ambitious person. I was fortunate that I had a career path from a very young age. I think I was about 12 when I decided I wanted to be a physiotherapist. At the start, it was either a physio or a brain surgeon, but I chose physio. I was always a sporty kid, and my goal was to get to the Olympics one day. I realised it was never going to be as an athlete, unfortunately, so I set my mind to get there as a physio. What is amazing to me is that my dream is actually coming true this summer, when I will be travelling to the Paris Olympic Games with Team GB as one of their physiotherapists in the Olympic Village. So I've spent the last 20 years of my career working towards this moment. This goal has helped me be very driven and ambitious. Alongside my work came my family, and I have a husband and 3 children who I love very much, and all who drive me very mad. Life was good until May 2020, when I got thrown a giant curveball, or lemon, as I like to call it now, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. This, of course, came as a giant shock. I was the fittest person I knew. I didn't smoke. I ate well. I was extremely aware of health and fitness, and I never thought I would be the one to hear those words. I'm sorry to say, it's cancer, at the young age of only 36. I have now learned it can happen to anyone, at any time. You never know when the cruel stick of the universe is going to strike. And the main thing I try and do these days is live today like it's your last, because you honestly do not know what is around the corner, even if you think you do. So this is the part of my story that I'm not going to go into today. And if you're interested in the specifics of my cancer journey, I invite you to listen back to my episode from July 2023. That was a hard one to record, and one I have no desire to go back to myself at this current point. Ultimately, it's safe to say that 2020 was a rough year. In the midst of the global pandemic, I endured cancer treatment, including chemotherapy, a double mastectomy, radiotherapy, antibody therapy, and hormone therapy, which I still take today. As we become more distant from that period, I feel maybe more surprised or have greater admiration of what I went through, but managed to come out the other side stronger. Somehow and somewhere, I found this strength within me, and I feel like a stronger, better version of myself the other side of it. When I started to look into this phenomenon, I became aware of the concept of post-traumatic growth. I wanted to explore this further and use the concepts to inspire the people around me who were themselves going through difficult times. So I set myself a goal of starting a podcast where I would interview people who have been through adversity but come back stronger. Real life heroes and true examples of the post-traumatic growth phenomenon. When I started on this podcast journey, I never would have known how much it would enrich my life. Like I said at the start, I have learned so much from talking to these amazing guests and by reading books which have been written by or recommended by them. And today I want to share some of my favourite learnings with you. I recently had Henry Fraser on the podcast, a quadriplegic, since a tragic accident occurred when he dived into the sea and hit his head onto a sandbank when he was only 17 years old. He explained the art of gratitude better than anyone who's ever talked to me about it. I've often seen podcasters, influencers talking about gratitude journals, but it's never made an awful amount of sense to me. But Henry explained it so beautifully. Henry said how after his accident, he saw things and felt things like never before. Like when he was able to drink water for the first time because nothing had been able to pass his lips for a few months. Or when he heard the birds chirping outside his hospital room because he'd been in an internal room in the hospital with no windows for so long. And his amazement of the joys and happiness that can come from the small things around us. And he says that we are surrounded by these little tiny moments each and every day, but we've become numb to them because they are so plentiful. But when we are able to recognize these small things every day, if something makes you feel a slight bit of warmth, feel it, enjoy it, embrace it. And his advice is that then, when negative things do happen to you, you're then in a better, clearer space to tackle them. And like Henry says, you can then accept, adapt, and move forwards. The name of his book, and now musical, The Little Big Things, I get that title now more than I ever did before. Since being ill, I suddenly found myself much more grateful of things like nature. So just going out for a run in a new environment, I would find myself stopping and taking it all in. The sound of the birds, the smell of the flowers, the beautiful views of the rolling English countryside or a coastal vista. Another guest who mentioned gratitude was Tom Daly, and he said you cannot feel anxious and grateful at the same time. So if you're feeling grateful, it's very hard to feel anxious. Personally, I don't do formal gratitude where I sit and I write it down. I think that feels a bit forced to me maybe. Because what if there's nothing you're actually grateful for? If you're having a bad day. So I phoned my dad up the other week in the morning, and he picked up the phone and I said, why do you sound so grumpy? And he said, well, I didn't sleep well. I've just woken up. Your mum shouted at me. My foot hurts. My parents are old. So I said, hang on, take a breath. Reframe it. How lucky are you to wake up to your wife of 45 years? Your parents are still alive, age 90 plus, and you're able to walk to work despite having foot pain. And it's easy to give that advice when it's you who's not woken up on the wrong side of bed. And I think the point of formal gratitude is it helps it to become a habit, so you don't need to do it formally after a period of time. But when we talk about reframing, it leads us towards mindset and how we have the power to control our mindset and how we feel. Like Dr. Sian Williams at the start of season 3 told me, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens in you. It's how we respond. So two people can have the same thing happen to them, and one will crumble and one will thrive. That is because of how we deal with it. And I quote Edith Eger all the time. She's an American psychologist, Holocaust survivor, and she writes, we should be thinking, not why me, but what now? Similar themes were covered in my chat with Steph Peltier, the happiness expert. She believes that happiness is a mindset, how we perceive the things around us and how we respond to it. We create our reality with thoughts and pictures in our head. Steph says that life is not a dress rehearsal. We have one shot. Do whatever it takes to be happy. If we are happy, we will make the people around us happy. And therefore, we will make the world a better place and go and build greatness around us. I've got a few quotes that have stuck with me from guests regarding mindset. So Tom Daly again says that worrying is a prayer for bad things to happen. I love that. Martine Wright, who was the most injured survivor of the 7/7 terrorist attacks, she has an incredible story of resilience. And she says that anything is possible as long as you believe. Mark Ormrod, who became a triple amputee after kneeling on an improvised explosive device whilst on duty in Afghanistan as a Royal Marine, he says that he attributes 80% of the success that he's achieved following his life-changing accident to the power from his mindset. He's an incredible example of how he could have just accepted his injuries and taken to life in a wheelchair, relying on others. But instead, he forged a new life as a triple amputee and has achieved remarkable physical feats some of us could only dream of. Let's talk about journaling, because it's often mentioned by my guests. Last week, Ricky Nuttall, the firefighter, talked passionately about the poetry that he has written following the Grenfell Tower fires and how his writing has helped him through his journey with PTSD. I personally found journaling very helpful at the early stages of my trauma. It helped me to process. I don't personally write now, but instead I speak through my podcast. And I think that me recounting aspects of my story and emotions associated with it is probably similar. Ricky also talked about finding strength in his vulnerability. For those of you who know Brené Brown, another American psychologist, she's done an amazing TED Talk on this. She says, let yourself be seen for who you really are, with all your flaws. Whatever it is, the right people will come when you accept yourself first. Don't try and fit in, be you. Face difficult emotions, feel them. And again, quoting Edith Eger, you can't heal what you don't feel. Goal setting has come up a lot in my conversations. As a physio, we use SMART goals. So that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. And this was ingrained in my psyche. But what I've actually realised from the chats I've had is that I was too intent on setting goals and not enjoying the now, the being, the process enough. I've now learned to set smaller goals. So don't set goals too far ahead. And I look at what I'm doing, how far I've come, and I make sure that I'm enjoying the now. Henry Fraser talked about the importance of goal setting in his rehab, and he set small, achievable goals. So for example, he would set a goal that he could breathe for 2 minutes without his ventilator one day, and then the next day would be 3 minutes, the next day 4 minutes, and so on. But all the time, remembering to enjoy the process. Just a couple more things I wanted to mention. What are your values? What is your why? You need to understand this to put context around why you do what you do. Lucy Gossage, who is a 14 times Ironman champion, she works as an oncologist, and she talked about what drives her in the extreme challenges that she takes on. And she says that choosing to suffer is a privilege, and that has become my sporting mantra. I'm midway through a sporting challenge myself, so to celebrate my 40th birthday, I set myself a goal of embarking on a big London sporting challenge every month of 2024, with the goal of raising £40,000 for charity. So I've already done the London Marathon, Ride London, which was a 100-mile cycle, an Olympic distance triathlon, an 18-hour tennis challenge, amongst others. So each month, I've had very little recovery. And to be honest, at times I have felt fully exhausted. But I keep reminding myself on and in between the challenges how lucky I am that I can feel this way. Friends whose cancer story hasn't gone the same way as mine, I'm sure wish that they could be standing on that start line. So this mantra of choosing to suffer is a privilege really helps me daily when things feel challenging. Also, the reflection on what is my why, what are my values. If I hadn't reflected on that prior to taking this on, it would be a lot harder to get out of bed an hour before the rest of my household to go out for a run in the cold and the rain. I have a why, I know my why, and that keeps me driven. And it also gives me a feeling of fulfillment and enjoyment. Final thought of the day. Steph Peltier talks about the prerequisite for happiness being human connection. And I couldn't agree more. Even if there isn't anyone to talk to one day, go and strike up a conversation with the person next to you at the bus stop or in the coffee shop, even if it is as small as saying that you like their t-shirt they're wearing. Try it, see how it makes you feel. Thank you for listening today and every week. We've got some really exciting things coming with When Life Gives You Lemons. So please remember to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to. Just press the plus in the top corner. Leave me a review. Let me know what you think on what I've talked about today. And you can also follow us at Life Lemons Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. And you can comment there as well to let me know anything, any thoughts on things that I've spoken about today. And I'm going to finish with a quote from Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy, who's the Oscar-winning film director who I interviewed recently, who said that a life lesson that she has learned is whatever life throws at you, you need to take that, embrace it, and find the strength to deal with it. When life gives you lemons. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Go build greatness around you.